Welcome to another video from ExplainingComputers.com. This time I'm going to create Windows 10 and Windows 11 virtual machines in Linux using VirtualBox. I did make a video about running Windows in Linux about 5 years ago. But things keep changing, and so this video is a much requested update. Whatever kind of Windows virtual machine we want to create in Linux, and however we're going to do it, there are two things to sort out before we begin. For a start, we need a Windows ISO file, and we can download the latest one for Windows 11 on this page down here. We just select like that and press Download Now. Or if we want Windows 10, we can go to this page. I'll link this and the previous page in the video description, where again we just scroll down, select the edition like that, click on Confirm, select our product language. And for Windows 10, we then get a choice of 32-bit or 64-bit editions. I'll select 64-bit, and we can then download the file. Secondly, we need to turn on hardware virtualization in our PC's BIOS. The precise controls for this do vary, but most Intel systems have a control for Intel virtualization technology, or sometimes individually for Intel VTX, which enables virtualization on the CPU, and Intel VTD, which allows direct hardware access for virtual machines. You'll probably have to go into your BIOS's advanced mode, and here on this particular ASRock motherboard, we need to go across to Advanced and then CPU configuration, and then if we go down here, somewhere down here, there it is, Intel virtualization technology, which we'll change to Enabled, and then we'll go across to Exit on the end, Save Changes and Exit, and Yes. Meanwhile, on an AMD system, and in this video we're working on a 5600G Ryzen PC, we need to find a BIOS setting called something like AMD Virtualization, AMD-V, or SVM, which stands for Secure Virtual Machine Mode. And so here in our particular Gigabyte AMD BIOS, we need to go across to Tweaker, to Advanced CPU Settings, where we find SVM mode. It tells us down here it's to do with virtualization, and we'll change that to Enabled, and as previously, go across to Save and Exit Setup, and exit Saving Changes. Greetings! In this video we're going to be working here on my 5600G Ryzen PC in Linux Mint 22. But everything I show will work in other distros, including Debian, Zorin OS and Ubuntu. To create a virtual machine, we need some hypervisor software, and as noted earlier, we're going to be using Oracle's VirtualBox. This we could download from the virtualbox.org website, but here we're going to use the graphical software installer, which I've got running down here, where if I search for VirtualBox, like that, we find a number of packages available, of which we need to install 3. And the first of these is the base package, so let's just install this. This gives us the basis of VirtualBox. And of course I need to enter my password. There we are, that's now installed. So if we go back, we're next going to install virtualbox-guest-additions-iso, which will improve the performance of our virtual machine, not least by permitting it to run full screen and allowing a shared clipboard. So let's install this. There we go. And then finally, I'm also here going to download the VirtualBox extension pack. And this is not needed, but it adds support for using things like USB 2 and USB 3 devices, as well as webcam pass-through, so it's very handy to have. However, note that unlike VirtualBox itself, which is free and open source, the extension pack is offered under a personal use and evaluation license, as indeed it tells us down here. So if you want to use it for anything other than personal or educational use, a license is required. And with this noted, let's do the install, which will invite us to accept the non-open source license. And there we go. All of the parts of VirtualBox that we need should now be installed. And if you're worried about selecting the right components, there is another way to do the installation, which I'll run through later in the video. But for now, things are okay here. So let's go down to the menu and run up VirtualBox, which I think sits in administration, does it? There we are. There's VirtualBox. Here it is. And we'll just click to get rid of that little message. And over here, I'm just going to click there and click on extensions just to check that the extension pack is installed. It is. And finally, before we create a virtual machine, I'm going to go to File and Preferences. And under General here, we can see where our virtual machines will be created in a folder called VirtualBox VMs in my home folder. And I'm just showing you this in case you want to change it before you start setting up virtual machines. But assuming you're happy with the default, as I am here, we will click on OK, and VirtualBox is all ready to go. Right, shall we create a virtual machine? I think we should, and we're going to start out creating one running Windows 10, as I imagine that's what most people currently interested in running Windows in Linux want to do. So let's go back to the welcome screen like that and click on New, where we'll call our virtual machine Windows 10, and we now need to select an ISO image, which we'll do over here. We'll click on Other, and in Downloads I've got some ISO images as we were looking at the last part of the video, and I'll select one for Windows 10 like that. And because it's an ISO file for lots of different versions of Windows 10, I'll also here select Windows 10 Pro, although due to what I'm about to tell you, that bit doesn't really matter. Anyway, the bit that does matter is the checkbox here called Skip Unattended Installation. And this option was introduced in VirtualBox 7 and allows an unattended install of an operating system. And so if we don't click this, in the next screen we would see we could enter a username and password and things for an unattended install, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to click on Skip Unattended Installation. And the reason for this is because currently there's a bug in VirtualBox that stops this working properly, at least when installing Windows, and in particular Windows 10. We will get an error message that looks like this, saying it can't read a product key value. And there are various videos out there saying, oh, you can fix this by doing this, this and this. All those videos do is show you how to get back to doing a manual install. And there are various forums that say you can edit the XML file created by VirtualBox to get around the issue. It initially looks like this in the product key part. You can edit it to look like this, but in my experience, at least in May 2025, it still doesn't work. And so we'll do an attended installation. That's all noted. We'll now click on Next, like that. We'll allocate resources for our virtual machine. I'm going to give it about half the memory on this system. This is a 16 gigabyte computer, but some of the memory has been used by the GPU. And we're going to allocate the virtual machine half of the available CPUs, that's 6 of them. So when the virtual machine is running, half of this computer's resources will be used by Windows 10 and the rest by Linux. So let's once again click on Next, where we can set up our virtual hard disk, where we're going to be installing Windows 10. And I'm happy with the default of 50 gigabytes. This won't all be used unless it's actually required, unless we click on Pre-allocate full size, which I'm not going to do. So once again, we'll click on Next, like that. We get a summary, and finally, we'll click on Finish, which will bring us back to this screen where we can go to the virtual machine and double-click it to boot it up. And this should now boot up from the Windows installation media, the ISO file for Windows 10. I'm just going to get rid of these messages. VirtualBox likes to tell us when it first does things, but once we get rid of the message once, it doesn't come back. And we're now going to do a standard install of Windows 10. And it's got my language right, so I'll click on Next and Install Now. And I don't have a product key, so I'll click on I don't have a product key. We can always enter one later on, and I will talk about that later in the video. And I'm going to install Windows 10 Pro, so we can easily set up with a local account. So once again, Next, and accept the license agreement, and a custom install. It's already selected our new virtual drive, so again, we'll click on Next. And there we are, Windows is being installed. It isn't too difficult not using the unattended installation. So, by the magic of filmmaking, we'll now speed on through. And now we need to answer some questions in the Windows installer. It's picked my region OK and my keyboard layout. I don't want a second layout. And now we have some more questions. I'm going to set up for personal use. I want an offline account. I really do want an offline account, I have to click on limited experience. I can set a username and a password. And I have to answer some daft security questions. I don't want to import from a browser. I don't want to share location data. I don't want to find my device. Required diagnostics only. No inking improvements, thank you very much. No, I don't want tailored experiences. No, I don't want to share an advertising ID. I certainly don't want customization. Don't think we'll use Cortana. I think I'll just close this down. And there we are, running a VirtualBox Windows 10 virtual machine here in Linux Mint. And it's currently running as a small window on the screen, as you can see, but we could go to View and Full Screen, at which point VirtualBox kindly tells us we can get back to a window mode at any time by pressing the Host key plus F, with the Host key currently set to be Right Control. So I'm going to set to not see that message again, and I will switch to full screen. And oh look, Windows is not full screen. And the reason for this is we don't currently have VirtualBox Guest Additions installed here in Windows 10. So we're going to go down to the bottom of the screen here where we have a menu for VirtualBox, and I'm going to select Devices where there's an option to insert Guest Additions CD image. So I'll enter on that, and hopefully that's now inserted in Windows. Let's pick up a File Explorer and go to this PC. And yes, we can see Guest Additions has been inserted. Let's open up that CD and run the 64-bit version of Guest Additions. Like that. Yes, we want to install it. And we just run through like a normal Windows install process. And there we are, it is installed, but we have to reboot, so we'll click on Finish. And here we are back again. I need to log in. There we go, and nothing looks different, but now with Guest Additions installed, I can right click and go to Display Settings, and whoa! Windows has automatically picked the right setting. We're now running properly full screen. And I'll just do that again. I'll go back to Display Settings. Maybe things happened automatically there, but we can see, yes, Windows has got a display resolution now of 1920-1080, which is the resolution we're currently working in. And I should just point out, if we want to get back to Linux Mint, we can go down to the menu here at the bottom and just minimize like that. We're back here in a Linux Mint, or we can go back to Windows just like that. Or of course, we could just close down the virtual machine. We can go to the Start menu, close down Windows in the normal fashion. And hey presto, we're back in Linux. Greetings, here I am back again. I've been tidying up the Windows 10 machine, doing a bit of font scaling, getting rid of rubbish. I put it back to not being full screen, but you can go back and forth as much as you like, just that way graphically, and you go back the other way as we just saw there. It's all very straightforward to use. But I thought we'd now move on to setting up a shared folder to share files back and forth between the virtual machine, the guest machine, and the host machine here, Linux Mint. So to do this, we'll first close down the virtual machine like that. There we go, and we'll go to the machine in VirtualBox and go to its settings and go down to shared folders, and we'll add a shared folder by clicking on the little plus folder icon up here. And then all we have to do is to select a folder path. We'll go to other here. I think I'll share my pictures folder by way of demonstration, but of course you might want to create a special folder just for shares. And then after that, we have to enter a mount point. Now in Windows, we've already got a virtual C drive, so we won't use the C drive. We'll go the other way. We'll mount it where we would mount a network drive starting at the end. We'll call it drive Z. And we will also click on auto mount, which makes things really easy here in VirtualBox 7. So we'll just click on OK like that and OK. And now relaunch our Windows 10 virtual machine. There we go. And if we go to the file manager down here and go to this PC, yes, we have a Z drive, which is the pictures folder I have in Linux, where I've got a folder called EC member updates with various pictures in, which we should be able to look at here in Windows. It works. We have a shared folder in which we can share data in either direction between our Windows virtual machine and our Linux host. Next, I thought I'd show you how to work with USB devices in a virtual machine, and for that I've got the virtual machine closed down, and I'm also about to close down VirtualBox, because even if we go to the machine and we go to its settings and we go to USB, where in theory we can add USB devices very easily, in practice this will not work on a Linux host until we've added the current user to the group VBox users. And so what I'm going to do is to cancel that and to close down VirtualBox and bring up a terminal. Here we are, and I've already entered the command we need into the terminal, a sudo usermod -a big G VBox users EC, where EC is the current username. You can see the current username is sitting there on the front of the command prompt. So if we enter that and then enter our password, there we are. We should now be able to work with USB devices using VirtualBox. Although before we can do that, we do need to reboot. And here we are back again, so let's relaunch VirtualBox. And if we select our Windows 10 virtual machine and go to Settings and to USB, I have got a USB drive plugged into the system, as you can probably see up here. And if we click this little button here to add a USB filter for the currently attached device, there we can see it here. There's lots of devices attached. There's a mouse and the keyboard, but I think we'll go for that, which is our USB drive. There we are. So we'll click on OK. And if we now launch our virtual machine and go to the File Explorer in this PC, yes, there's our USB drive called Stanley, containing the same pictures we saw earlier, but clearly we're accessing the drive, no problems at all. And it's worth pointing out you can add any type of USB device like that, including a printer. And any device you've added a filter for will automatically be picked up the next time you use the virtual machine. As we've now seen, installing a VirtualBox Windows virtual machine in Linux can be pretty straightforward. However, I just wanted to point out that in some distros, the installation of VirtualBox is not quite as straightforward as it's been for us in Linux Mint. For example, here in Ubuntu, if we search for VirtualBox in the App Center, we only find one Debian package available, the base package, and if we install this, it'll work, but we won't have the guest-additions-iso or the extension pack. And so, if you are running Ubuntu or any other distro that doesn't offer you all the parts of VirtualBox in its software installer, you'll either have to download VirtualBox from the VirtualBox website or open up a terminal and execute sudo apt install virtualbox, followed by sudo apt install virtualbox-guest-additions-iso, and finally, if you want the extension pack, sudo apt install virtualbox-ext-pack, where, as we've seen previously, it'll ask you to accept the non-open source license. And I will include these three commands down in the video description. Right, with that hopefully helpful diversionary point made, shall we create a Windows 11 virtual machine here in Linux Mint? Why not? And as you may guess, making Windows 11 virtual machines can be problematic due to the hardware requirements of Windows 11. Things like TPM 2.0 that stop it being installed on many older computers can make it difficult to create Windows 11 virtual machines, including here in Oracle VirtualBox. But right now, with the current version of Windows 11, which is 24H2, things do seem to be working. So let's have a go. Let's click on New and give the machine the name Windows 11, and then pick up an ISO file as we did previously. There we are, Windows 11 24H2. And I'm going to go down and pick Windows 11 Professional. And this time I'm going to leave unticked skip unattended installation. This will be an automated install, and it will have the odd hiccup, but not ones we can't overcome. So if we click on Next, we can now enter a username and password for a local account in Windows 11. And we will correct the hostname over here to something that doesn't include a space. That's why we've got the problem over there. Let's call it, for example, Win11. That will do. And we'll automatically install guest additions just by clicking that box and then click on Next. We will adjust our resources as we did previously, giving the machine about half the RAM and CPU cores. We will leave the virtual disk settings as they are, and hopefully we can now just click on Finish. And as I said, it will have a few problems. It seems to have a few problems early on. Let's press a key to help it on. Can it start the installer? Doesn't seem happy, it can't find the image, but we can easily pick it up again. There it is. And it seems now to be going. Always seems to have that little hiccup at the start, but that's okay. And it will hiccup once more. There we are, it's got to product key, but this time, unlike in Windows 10, I can simply click on I don't have a product key. And after this, we should get a totally automated Windows 11 install. So let's use the magic of filmmaking to speed on through. And things I think are looking hopeful. We have a great chance here of success. And there we are. Core blimey Mary Poppins, it's worked. Windows 11 is installed here in a virtual machine. The unattended install in VirtualBox 7 is fantastic when it works. And it should even have installed guest additions automatically. So if we go to View and to Full Screen, yes, things have sorted themselves out straight away. We can now have a joyous time with Windows 11 as a guest in Linux Mint. Right, a few final things, and first here in VirtualBox, if we go to a virtual machine and right click it, there is an option to create a shortcut on the desktop. And this means we can close down VirtualBox and launch the machine just by clicking on its icon, which is rather handy. As we do this, a word on licensing. As we did not enter a product key during installation, the virtual machines we've created are not activated, but you can purchase a license and activate a virtual machine in exactly the same way as Windows on real hardware. And so here, let's go to Settings, like that, and I'm sure the machine wants to be activated. Yes, it does. So let's click on Windows isn't activated. And I've purchased a very low cost Windows 10 Pro key online, so let's see if it works. Let's click on Change Product Key, and I'll enter my key and click on Next. Will it work? Yes, it worked fine. This copy of Windows is now activated. And it's worth noting, if you already have an OEM key that you've used on existing hardware, it probably won't work on a virtual machine, even on the same hardware. But a retail Windows key should be able to be transferred to a virtual machine. Let's now close down. And if we return to VirtualBox and go to the machine and its settings, I want to point out that under Network, it's possible to disable the machine's network adapter, which is useful if you want, for example, to have an offline version of Windows 10. Finally, let's open up the folder in Home where our virtual machines are stored. This is the folder I pointed out earlier, and you can see here that each virtual machine just has its own folder containing its files. So to make a backup, you can take a copy to another drive. And this also makes it easy to move virtual machines between computers, and indeed to restore a virtual machine if you change your Linux distro. For example, on an external SSD, I've got a copy of a Windows XP machine. Let's just take a copy of that and drop it onto this computer. And if we now go back to VirtualBox, we just click on Add. We can pick up that machine, pick up its file and open. There it is. And we can now boot up this machine. And there we are, running Windows XP on this machine. And the display settings weren't set right for the machine we're on. That doesn't matter, but at least I've shown you the principle. It is very easy to back up, move around and restore VirtualBox virtual machines. VirtualBox remains my favourite virtualization software for running Windows in Linux. As we've seen, there can be some setup issues to contend with, but they are easily overcome and the final results are well worth the effort. But now that's it for another video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.